I'm talking to you on this forum because our face-to-face meeting was upended by the interference of COVID-19. However, bearing in mind this disquieting reality, we recognize that life must go on, and this life includes decisions about justice, not only Black Lives Matter, civil rights, human rights, and many other kind of rights. But the rights that I am today to talk to you about is still the pressing ones about gay and lesbian relationships. Such rights, although they seem to have taken a backseat to the pandemic that rages, they are still never far away from our personal and corporate consciousness. And such rights, or denial of these rights, affect all of us. Originally, the topic that I had previously prepared for the Intimate Conviction Conference was titled Sex and Sexuality, particularly homosexuality in relation to the Christian Church and the evangelical traditions in the Caribbean. But let me begin here with the most recent development that is germane to the subject. On September 15, 2020, it was published in a Barbadian newspaper, Barbados Today, that the government of Barbados has revealed that it is prepared to, quote, recognize a form of civil union for couples of the same gender, so as to ensure that no human being in Barbados will be discriminated against in exercise of civil rights that ought to be theirs, end of quote. However, the government recognized that such a plan, quote, will attract controversy. But equally, it is our hope that with the passage of time, the changes we now propose will be part of the fabric of our country's record of law, human rights, and social justice, end of quote. Now, a significant section of Barbados, which prides itself in being very religious, has forcibly come out against the intentions of the government to recognize civil same-sex relationships. So, for instance, the Anglican Bishop of Barbados, Reverend Michael Maxwell, said that, quote, the Anglican Church in Barbados and the rest of the province of West Indies remain fortified in its position stemming from a decision of the 1998 Lambeth Conference of Anglican Bishops in England that marriage is a lifelong union of a man and a woman, end of quote. Likewise, church leaders in Jamaica have denounced the move of Barbados for seeking to recognize civil same-sex marriage unions. Quote, I think Barbados is on the wrong road, and what it is going to cost them is frightening, end of quote, says the Jamaican church leader. So the president of the Jamaica Association of Evangelicals, Dr. Peter Garth, speaking to the Jamaica Observer newspaper, says, quote, I can speak clearly and loudly regarding the position of evangelicals. We hold to the biblical position. Morality does not evolve. And 3,000 years from now, if the Lord tarries, we will have the same position. End of quote. Likewise, the chairman of the Jamaica Pentecostal Union Apostolic, that's JPUA, Reverend Major Canute Chambers, speaking on the matter, said that body was unwavering in its stance. He says, quote, but as for me, and I believe I speak for the entire JPUA, we are completely against same-sex marriages or unions of any kind, end of quote, he told the Observer. But there are a minority of other people, say in Barbados, who are supportive of the government's move. One person declares, we must remember that Barbados is a secular country, not a theocracy. Our state apparatus does not align itself to any particular religious group, end of quote. However, in the main, there were more people in disagreement with and hostile to the government's proposals to recognize same-sex unions than there were for it. Not surprisingly, the dissenters were usually quoting the Bible for denouncing the government's attempt to bring about civil unions between same-sex couples. This homosexual opposition is not only seen in Barbados, but also seen in the wider Christian and non-Christian communities throughout the Caribbean. However, despite the evangelical churches and other conservative Christian organizations' enmity towards the LGBTQ+ community, there are legal measures that are taking place to decriminalize or make less onerous the numerous burdens placed on the homosexual community. So, for instance, in 2017, a Trinidad and Tobago judge ruled that homophobic laws were unconstitutional. This ruling, which declared sections of the Sexual Offences Act unconstitutional, may soon lead to the criminalization of gay sex. Also in Belize, same-sex sexual activity was illegal in Belize until 2016, when the Supreme Court declared Belize's anti-sodomy law unconstitutional. My thesis was and is, quote, "Gay rights are indistinguishable from civil and human rights," end of quote. So I pose the following questions. Who is it to decide and determine our sexual orientation or preferences? Is it to be the church, the government, or some other impersonal or coercive entity? Or is it we who are to be the sole agents of our bodies? I went on to suggest that in our time and in our cultures, there had been a time, and still is, when skin color, certain physical or mental disabilities, or gender differences were and are still used as weapons to exclude people from the general society. For instance, denying them voting rights, equal opportunities in respect of housing, employment, and so forth. But still in several Western cultures and non-Western ones, and sadly in many Caribbean churches, discrimination and animosity remain towards the LGBTQ+ community. However, the time has long gone, whether we like it or not, to recognize the wide spectrum of sexuality and gender identities that exist. In conclusion, so in the final analysis, sex and sexuality, bisexuality, homosexuality, heterosexuality are intimate bodily expressions about how nature seeks to ensure a sustainable and an equilibrious world. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, George, and many congratulations for being the first speaker who's kept it under 9 minutes. That was a sterling performance. But yes, you've marvelously outlined the problems that we have when Caesar and God somehow conflict. We have it here, you have it there in Jamaica. Indeed, it's all over the Caribbean. When people pretend to judge on the basis of a few biblical texts, which are taken completely out of context and have not been properly interpreted. So thank you very much for that. And I hope you'll be with us for the question and answer. Our next speaker is Dr. Danielle Roper, Nubile Family Assistant Professor of the University of Chicago. So very warm welcome, Dr. Danielle.